Yeah, boy, it's May 20th, and it's episode 75, and this is a Fantasy Football Auctioneer. I'm your host, Uncle Buckets. The Fantasy Football Auctioneer is the official podcast of thefantasyfootballauction.com, the internet's only website dedicated to fantasy football auctions. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/fantasyfootballauctioneer, or follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We are at Fantasy Auction. We've got a great show for you tonight. Tonight we're going to discuss the Stevie Johnson move. We're going to talk about Josh Gordon and his use and abuse and the suspension. And then we're going to break down the major free agent moves in the AFC. Of course, our experts are here. He's putting the finishing touches on our new Dynasty startup. Slim, have you decided on the IDP rules yet?
I'm pretty sure, yes. I've had a long chat out of our fishing weekend with a couple, shouldn't even say long chat. I just brought it up, and a couple people said, nah, they didn't want to do it. Some people said yes. I just figured we won't do it.
So no IDP at all, or?
None at all. None at all. Because some guys were like, well, let's just do a couple. I said, no, I don't want to do three.
Right. And the pendulum swings. There's just a tragically hip to good little soundbite there, if I remember it. All right. All right, and of course, Blister's here too. He's scrubbing the Habs jersey germs off his skin. Blister, did you get all the Habs off you?
Yeah, that was what an interesting day though for wearing around this Habs jersey, which I never thought I'd ever see in my life, and the looks I got from the kids around the building, it was just amazing. Like, some were just looking at me like jaw dropping to the floor, like, what happened? What's going on here? Because they were so confused. And then others were like, yeah, our team's in big trouble. And I'd be like, no, not our team, man. I hope your team loses. I hate this team. And just other ones are like, you can't jump ship now and jump on the bandwagon. I said, don't worry, I'm not getting on this bandwagon. So, man, I probably would have been worse if the Habs weren't down 2-0 to the Rangers, but I love it. So go Rangers, go.
Well, I love your answer when they go, hey, jersey looks good on you. No, it doesn't. I just like that answer. Just so simple. And I do love the kids getting selfies taken with you too. So I thought that was
yeah. I felt like paparazzi there at school today. I was running around and pictures being flashed because I had this jersey on. It was a tough day. It was kind of fun though, but unbelievable. It was a different experience.
So I can only guess who gave it to you.
No, you can't.
No, you probably can't.
Was it Billy then?
No. His is crumpled up in a ball on top of the filing cabinet. I saw it in there today. Like, at least fold it if you love it. Fold it.
And from the college.
What? Holy
she's
man.
a big Habs fan. She was tweeting or putting it on Instagram when, as soon as the series was over, a picture of herself wearing it, pointing at the jersey saying that I'll be wearing it at school next week. And it was sad. She did it well.
She was waiting down at the office first thing. It was good. It was awesome to watch.
Impressive.
Yeah.
All right. So, well, why don't we get it rolling in case we have technical difficulties? I hope that's not I'm going to knock on wood, which is the stand I use for the computer monitor. Anyways, if you guys are ready, then I'm ready. Let's cock the hammer. It's time for action. So, like I said, tonight we're going to take a look at the AFC free agent moves and their fantasy implications. We're also going to talk a little bit of fantasy news, Josh Gordon, Stevie Johnson, which we didn't get to last week. But first, we do have an email question that came in. So if you'd like to email us, we are footballauctioneer@gmail.com. So one of our fans from, a whole nother hemisphere, continent, NFL Kiwi, he writes us, and it's a long email, Slim. I know you've gone through it, so I've just taken out a couple of nuggets from it. So he's talking about Jay Cutler. So I'll just do a couple little nuggets here. Okay, Cutler's never been a huge fantasy star, but prior to injury, he was on pace for a very nice season. And now that he's heading into his second season under the quote-unquote quarterback whisperer, he'll have a greater understanding of what Tressman wants and will clearly be much better. So for argument's sake, Slimmy says, if you put aside Cutler's last season's injuries and you give him Josh McCown's fantasy points for the weeks that he replaced him, Cutler would have finished with 302 points, which would have left them third best QB in their season standings. So, Slim, the question is, why no love for Jay Cutler? And go.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that there's no love necessarily. I mean, yeah, you can add up McCown and Cutler's points last year and say, oh, this is what we project for the Bears offense. Well, that doesn't work for, that way. I kind of like to look at it for average fantasy points per game that they play, because then you can kind of take out injuries and things like that. And if you start looking at those numbers, you'll see that in 2013, Cutler ranked as the 21st quarterback as far as fantasy points per game. And that was his best year in Chicago. So guys like Colin Kaepernick, Ryan Tannehill, they all finished better than him. There was 18 guys that had 20 points per game or better as a fantasy quarterback. So with Cutler's best year, production-wise, while he was there, he still finished as outside the top 20. Go back to 2012. There was 15 guys that had better than 20 points per game. Cutler finished as the 25th quarterback. 2011, there was 11 guys, and he was 19th. In 2010, if you even go back that far, there were 12 quarterbacks, and Cutler finished 19th again. So, I mean, sure, his offense has improved. He has weapons. Great. He's only played in one season since his time in Chicago where he's played a full season. So that does hurt him there. And I would agree that, I agree with our listener. But, I mean, the proof to me is there. Yes, he could go and have a great season this year and finish as maybe a top 10 quarterback. To me, there's no doubt about that. Will he do it? I just think the risk, it's a little bit risky because, one, he has an elite running back, which I think definitely takes touches away or passing touchdowns away from Cutler potentially. And I mean, I think that on draft day, he's a guy. He's polarizing. Either you think that he is capable of this, or you hate him. And to me, there's always a couple guys in a draft that want to value him as a quarterback one, a low-end quarterback one, and they're going to pay to get that. And to me, if I'm looking at his past 4 years, I see the 20th ranked fantasy quarterback, and I'm not going to pay quarterback one price to draft him. So if I could get somebody like Tannehill, who's probably going to be cheaper, maybe even Tony Romo, and statistically Romo shows that he's been better year in, year out, I'm going to spend my money there. And I get the argument that this offense is better, well, I mean, he's still got to prove it. He's got to be on the field, and he hasn't. So, yeah, he can do all these things, and yeah, he has these awesome weapons. The other thing, too, is if you look at that offense, when is everybody clicking all at the same time? One time you see Alshon Jeffrey have a huge game. Brandon Marshall doesn't do that much. Martellus Bennett, he only had 5 touchdowns last year. So, I mean, that's not necessarily elite tight end production. So I'm not sure if I would even include him on that list, even though we have our ranking suggesting that he could be a top tight end one. So I don't know. And yeah, if you look at the quarterbacks, once you get past, say, the top 5, some of them aren't separated by very much. So, a couple extra touchdowns for Cutler can really vault his, ranking. Maybe he moves up 5 spots or something like that. But the fact remains that he hasn't done that yet. And even with his best season last year, he was still outside the top 20 as far as fantasy points per game. So if these guys are all log jammed together, I'm going to take one of the cheaper options versus somebody who might go for 3 times the value of what some of these cheaper options will go for.
Well, just you mentioned Tannehill. If you look at overall points last year, he finishes 16 overall, 238. What I found interesting is Eli Manning more points at the end of the year than Jay Cutler. Anyways,
Eli,
that's just terrible. Putting that.
Yeah, but
sorry.
I mean, Cutler didn't play many games, right? He only played 11 games.
No, but that's what I mean. How bad Eli is. Eli only scored 2 more points.
Well, Ryan Fitzpatrick played 11 games, and he scored. Did he score more points? Yeah, he scored 1 more point. I'm looking at FF today.
Okay.
I mean, so it could vary slightly, but still, the fact that Ryan Tannehill scored as many points, say, or roughly as many points as Cutler in the same amount of games. I mean, would you argue that Ryan Fitzpatrick is a top-tier quarterback?
Right. Hey, Blister, now just part of the argument here, too, is what's that? You're not paying attention?
I'm Ron Burgundy.
I kind of threw that like there was a question mark in the script there, and I don't know why I said it that way, so I just thought of that line. Feel free to insert it into the pod. I'm sure somebody might laugh at that, maybe me. But
I'll see if I can't find it there. Sorry. Anyways, yeah, that was for you. No, Blister, I was going to say, so we have, Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey ranked, pretty high as, wide receiver one-ish guys. So wouldn't that make their quarterback wide receiver one-ish? Just out of curiosity? Like, where's the argument there? Or
hasn't so far. I mean, we seem to have this argument every year about Jay Cutler, and we make a lot of Bears fans pretty mad at us when we do it. But the numbers don't lie. We haven't been wrong. I mean, we might have been wrong about something once, but I don't remember it.
Don't just ask your wife.
Yeah, well, that's regular, but I mean, it was in fantasy.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, he does have some elite talent surrounding him, but for whatever reason, he just doesn't himself get into. He just can't beat out those other quarterbacks to become a QB1. It seems his numbers every year put him into that like Slim says, 15 to 24 range, which. And at the end of the year, his guys still end up with those numbers. So until he does something different, I guess plays 16 games and break a top 10 in quarterback rankings, we have no reason to put him ahead of so many of these other guys that we know, will be there again. There's a lot of good quarterbacks out there, but he's not one of them. Sorry, Bears.
Well, I mean, the thing is, it's a passing league, right? And you look at even just the yards. So Cutler threw for, I'm just looking really quick, he had 2,600 yards in 11 games, okay? So granted, yeah, he missed some time, but I mean, RG3 played 13 games. He threw for 600 more yards. So in 2 games, and I don't think anyone would say RG3 had a great year by any stretch, yet he was way up there. I mean, he's never going to throw for the yardage that Manning, Breeze, and those guys. I mean, that's clear, but so with all these completions and attempts and whatever, he's still not putting up the yardage that you need to get up, into that upper echelon or those upper tiers of quarterbacks. Even Nick Foles, prolific offense, played 2 more games than Cutler, threw for not that many more yards, but then he had 8 more touchdowns, and a ton less interceptions. So, I mean. He just doesn't compete with some of these guys for whatever reason, and yeah, no one will argue that he doesn't have elite weapons. So, I mean, where does the blame start to fall?
If a receiver gets 1,000-yard season, or an elite receiver nowadays might get to 12 to 1,400. So say we give Marshall 1,400 yards and 1,200 to Jeffrey. There's only 2,600 yards. Like realistically, if you look at the rest of the weapons now. Forte's not going to get 1,000 yards receiving, but he's going to be a decent option of the backfield. And Bennett, he's too inconsistent, and he's not going to put up huge numbers like that. If he gets 600 yards, after that, the rest of those guys, they're not there. So those are good enough numbers to make those receivers and those individual players elite and in the top 10 or 12 of their category potentially. But when you add them all up, it's still not good enough for him to be an elite quarterback. So you take those guys, yeah, they're going to be there, but that's not it. He's going to have to get up to 4,500 yards. So where's the rest of the talent that's going to do that for him? Those guys aren't receiving. They're not getting 2,000 yards each in receiving. Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey. So therein lies the problem.
And they're not necessarily they're not necessarily built the same way that, say the Falcons are, where they have a capable running back. They're going to hand off the ball, and Aaron Rodgers is a bit of an anomaly, and we'll see Aaron Rodgers' numbers dip down too now that they have a quality running back. But Drew Brees, they don't have a running game per se in New Orleans, and we saw finally with Trestman coming in, Forte got his touches, and we saw the fantasy repercussions of what happens when you give Forte touches. He was a top running back, so that's going to work against Cutler as well. So I mean, whatever. I mean, we can argue, and we've done this. We have people that we know that like Cutler quite a bit, and
yes,
I'm not saying I don't like him, but I think that the proof shows that there's going to be cheaper options every year that are going to outperform Cutler. Hopefully you can find them. I'm willing to take the gamble that I can, and I will pass on somebody like him, try to drive his price up at an auction, and let somebody else be disappointed.
I do like that he's on the league.
His wife was there, though.
Yeah. Just saying.
He always is.
There's something I like about him.
You were supposed to contact those guys, Beckett, and see if they wanted
I emailed them. I did email. I went through Taco's fan page. Not fan page, his official page. I haven't heard back from him. Anyways.
Maybe they don't quite believe Taco. Maybe.
Well, it was the only one I could actually find any sort of stuff online. Anyways, that's okay. We'll move on from Jay Cutler because I can see that Slim has this like arsenal of weapons to. He did his homework on this one, which I love. That's what you love about Slim. So he has an opinion, and you have it lined up, and it's good.
I was doing the NFC North tonight, actually, for our draft kit, so it just kind of was coincidental that you wanted to talk about this tonight, and I just had a few points that, believe me, I'm not a Cutler hater. I've gone into drafts thinking I would take him, but, I mean, it's hard to argue with the stats, and we've talked about it. You can add up all the points you want year in, but it has to translate week to week in fantasy, so... Right. It just doesn't do that with him.
One last comment about Cutler here, because Red Zone's listening right now live on YouTube, and he's a Bears fan, but he said Cutler's a knucklehead. So, great accent by Slim. Full. He meant
is it a Minnesota accent? Is that what he's getting at? So,
I'll throw an A in there next time and really throw.
Oh yeah, good. Well, they think we're from Minnesota from the accent, Minnesota, which I don't know how many times we've had to say we're Canada's #1 fantasy football podcast. Anyways, I was going to mention you brought up Slim the draft kit. We're working feverishly on the draft kit as it stands. You can head on over to our website, thefantasyfootballauction.com/draft kit. And take a look for yourself. We have some samples from last year's kit on there. We have an early bird special on until the end of the month. Right now, we're working on it. We're going to be somewhere up over 100 pages on our first edition, which will then be updated for free, sent to your inbox each and every time we update it throughout the summer. Last year, I think we had it at 4 updates over the course of the summer. So all the latest information was right at your fingertips, rankings, articles, those types of things. This year, we're experimenting with the multimedia version of it. So there'll be the print edition that you can just print off and go that way. But this year, we're taking a look at embedded video, links to the spreadsheets that we use so that you can edit for your own use, links to these podcasts. So as we go through the running backs, let's say, during the summer, we'll have an embedded video with our running back special on there, link to the running back podcast right on there. And it's viewed from your smartphone, from your tablet, from your computer, and printable. So just kind of keep that in mind. Head on over to the website, thefantasyfootballauction.com/draft kit. And Slim is working on the NFC as we, not as we speak, but what? No. Did you just put that pick in? Vince. Anyways, you see that blister?
No.
Latimer just went.
What?
Yeah. Sons of bitches.
Guys are reading our minds.
Oh, wow.
We didn't even mention it on the pod. Anyways, we'll move on. Let's do a little bit of fantasy news, Booster. We'll stick with you for this one. Just looking through the internet, there's the quote-unquote full expectation that Browns receiver Josh Gordon will be suspended for the entire 2014 season. That, according to ESPN's Adam Schefter. Sports Illustrated Peter King said earlier that Gordon is staring at a suspension of 8 to 16 games. Obviously, as we have heard, that Gordon tested positive for marijuana recently, and he'll be suspended as a repeat violator of the NFL drug policy. He's expected to be on the field for OTAs. He was for OTAs, and away we go. But he's going to appeal, yada yada. Anyways, Blister, what does this do for Josh Gordon? I was kind of thinking, some guys sitting with him as far as fantasy goes, but in redraft, do you draft him? How much are you looking for? What does it do for his supporting cast? So there's lots of question marks now with Josh Gordon.
Yeah, that's bad. The worst part I don't get, what I really don't understand is that the Browns were aware of this before they went into the NFL draft. I just don't understand how can they let Sammy Watkins get away from them, knowing that they potentially could be losing their receiver. So
right.
Why did that happen? Like, did they think there's a chance that they might not lose him, or it's only for part of the season? I mean, to me, Josh Gordon on one side, Sammy Watkins on the other side. You got Jordan Cameron at tight end. You got a Ben Tate. You could have had Carlos Hyde even. Not that I don't like Terrence West, who we just drafted, but you could have had a hell of an offense right there. But they didn't, and now, not only do they not have Sammy, they don't have Josh Gordon, and right now Andrew Hawkins might be their number one receiver. Now, that doesn't bode well for the passing offense in Cleveland. So, I don't think at this point you can draft him. I mean, it's too late for some of us that have already been in drafts. I took him in a draft already in the first round in the draft, and I was relying on him as my number one. So I'm kind of, obviously can't do much about it because it's like best ball. Your best players are activated each week, so I can't worry about it anymore. Right. In our draft, though, someone's got him. I think maybe Ethan traded for him in the one we're doing right now. So that really hurts when you trade for him and then you get hosed like that. But as far as the receiving cores go, Nate Burleson, he has a broken arm or something. He's recovering from that. Who knows what's going to happen with him? Andrew Hawkins, they did pick up in the wake of this. They signed Miles Austin and Earl Bennett. Right. Now, it would be nice to see a little resurgence from Miles Austin, but I guess we'll have to wait and see how he looks through training camp. Earl Bennett, I don't have a lot of faith in. So what does all this mean for Cleveland? Well, it could mean a heck of a huge increase for targets for Jordan Cameron. I mean, he's a reliable receiver there. He's a tight end, I know, but he could see an uptick in targets just looking at that list of receivers I gave you, and it also could mean a run-heavy offense too. They're going to have to try to do. If say Manziel's a quarterback, say he beats out Hoyer, and he can scramble and he can run, but you look at RG3, hopefully he learned a lesson from taking too many hits and getting banged up. Not that you can't be a scrambling running quarterback and have success, but you just have to be smart and know when to get out of bounds. But they're probably going to want to protect him if that's the case. A lot of handoffs, maybe some dump offs to hopefully Jordan Cameron, and then we'll see what their offense can do. Now, Ben Tate, this is getting a little away from Josh Gordon, but I don't think, and we'll probably get there in a second, but Ben Tate, I'm not convinced that he can really carry the load for an entire year either. He's always banged up. So you could see a whole slew of running backs take the field in Cleveland. So I think that's, in light of this Josh Gordon potentially being gone for the whole year, which probably will happen. That's what I think that's going to be the fallout, though. I think there's going to be, a lot more. Hopefully Jordan Cameron's involved a lot more, and probably the run game. Why do people think it might not happen? I know the NFL's putting in a policy probably next year that's going to have a little less of a heavy hand when it comes to marijuana use. And I think a lot of this is all getting tied into concussions and treating it and everything along that line. So it's kind of from the medicinal angle, or they're going to base everything out of Colorado, one of those two things, I'm not sure. Or Amsterdam or something, move everything, all the league offices.
Amsterdam's getting its
suspension
team.
committees. So yeah, but that's I guess that's probably what some Brown owners and Cleveland fans are hoping for, is that somehow they can tie this upcoming policy into this situation and have maybe the fine not so severe. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think they still probably want to set a good example here, and it's really unfortunate because he's quite a talent, and the Cleveland offense is going to be really missing him, and so will all the fantasy owners out there.
Yes, and what a change it does make to that whole landscape, right? To guys doing redrafts and spending a lot of cash on a Josh Gordon, and now scrambling to find, to move their wide receiver 2 into 1 and their 3 into 2 and their bench into a 3. Yeah. It's a whole big shuffle, eh? So lots of trading going on.
Yeah.
And
you can't just replace a guy like that with that much talent. Like you're going to take a hit if you've had an auction already or a draft or whatever. I mean, he's your first round pick, or he was your potentially could have been a $50 receiver out of your $200 budget, or around that ballpark, and that's just money you can't get back. So yeah, it's hard to replace a guy like that. And most people I know are fortunate. Most of the real drafts don't really happen until August probably. So
there's a guy on his 4th draft already, right?
Well, I shouldn't say real draft, I guess. I mean, I guess a lot more. Maybe not. Maybe we're in the real drafts right now, the guys that are bleeding in fantasy football year-round. But I guess probably a lot of the leagues and stuff wouldn't start up until later. But, I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, a few already and have another one, I don't know, a couple starting coming up. Hey, Slim, when's your startup? When's the Dynasty startup?
I like to do it near the start of June here sometime, but so maybe we'll wait until school's out.
A couple weeks away. Yeah, wicked.
Yeah, I know.
All right,
we might wait till school's done, though.
Okay. Finish marking exams. Slim, let's move to you. Near and dear to your heart, the Niners have traded for a conditional pick in the 2015 draft to the Bills for receiver Stevie Johnson, and this comes in the wake of Buffalo picking up Sammy Watkins. Anyways, we know it could be a 4th rounder or a 3rd rounder, depending on incentives and how Stevie Johnson does or how the Niners do, etc. So it is a pickup for the Niners, who have been you've been kind of waiting for some receivers to show up there with Crabtree when he was injured last year, etc., etc. Two-part question. First of all, what do you think about Stevie Johnson becoming a 49er in general? And then secondly, what does this do for his fantasy implications?
Oh, I think for real football, it's awesome. But I think you're getting a buy low candidate. There sounds like they'll probably end up having to give up a 4th rounder for him. During the draft, they went and traded some of their picks and picked up an extra 4th round pick. So now they've more or less acquired Stevie Johnson for a 7th round pick. When it's all shaken out as far as all the moves that they made. So you got to love that as a Niners fan. As far as fantasy implications, I think it hurts Crabtree slightly. I think it hurts Bolden slightly. I think it hurts Stevie Johnson a lot more because I think he's going to be on the field a lot less than he's accustomed to. The Niners don't run tons of 3 wide receiver sets. That doesn't mean that he'll never be on the field for any 2 wide receiver sets, because I think there are times where he would be beneficial to use, say, with Crabtree instead of just strictly Bolden and Crabtree out there together. But I think it'll definitely cut into his time out in the field. I think who it hurt or helps the most, quite frankly, is Kaepernick. I don't think he may necessarily be a top 5 quarterback, but it can never hurt to add quality receiving options for a young quarterback. So yeah, I think if you're a Kaepernick owner, you're probably the happiest out of this bunch with the move, and the rest you're maybe a little bit hesitant. There's just a lot of now better receivers than Stevie Johnson that he's got to compete with for passes in a run first kind of smash mouth type offense. So not really a good thing if you're a Stevie Johnson owner and you just maybe picked him up or you have him in a dynasty draft or something. You're pretty bummed out a little bit.
Okay. But good for real football. As a Niners fan, this is exciting for you. Sure. I mean, for a 7th rounder, that's pretty good potential there.
Yeah, for more or less what they're going to have to give up. I mean, you can't beat value like that. And a guy that's probably got something a little bit to prove, he's probably feels a little bit slighted by, being let go like that.
Well, and I mean, he must be disappointed moving out of Buffalo to move to San Francisco. I'm sure that was a tough pill to swallow.
Well, especially when he's from the area, yeah. I mean, that would be sad for him. I actually saw an interview he did when he got to San Francisco. He said he was sad, honestly, but he said he couldn't lie. His family was quite happy. So,
sure.
Yeah, that was good for him.
All right, so let's segue into Buffalo and their free agency stuff. We're just going to go back and forth. Guys, we've got AFC free agents. I'm going to alternate back and forth. Like I said, I'll mention a couple of names. If you don't care, if there's not a lot to say, then let's just say that and move on. I think that some of these kind of answer themselves and others maybe require a little bit of talk, but we'll go back and forth to each of you because there's a lot to hit here as far as AFC free agencies. And I think we'll talk about some of these guys a little bit more as the summer wears on, as we get into wide receiver, running back, tight end specials, and see what things look like preseason-wise. So, Blister, let's start with you, staying with Buffalo. Buffalo picked up, after dropping Stevie Johnson, not after, so I guess prior to, there's a Mike Williams they picked up from Tampa, Bryce Brown, running back, obviously, out of the Eagles. I guess two big names they pick up as far as free agency goes. Anything you want to mention about those two and fantasy implications?
You just mentioned 2A because I know you had Ramses Barden on there.
Yeah, and then I'm like, I don't care, so I skipped it.
Yeah, I mean, he's not anybody we need to be talking about.
I think you're going to talk about Mike Williams before you will Barden, so that's why I went that way.
Yeah, Mike Williams is a guy who, before last year, he only played in about 6 games, but prior to that, he was averaging about 63 catches a year, and he really varied. Like 1 year he had 11 touchdowns, and 1 year down to 3, and then up to 9 again. So he's a guy that I probably didn't give a lot of respect to in a lot of drafts, but yet he quietly put up fantasy numbers, pretty good if you wanted to grab him as a wide receiver 3. Now he goes into Buffalo potentially as the veteran. He's 27 years old. All the receivers they have are fairly young. Obviously, Sammy Watkins is going to get a lot of attention, but we know rookies tend to, rookie receivers tend to struggle a bit out of the gate. So it's not like Sammy Watkins is stepping in and Drew Brees is throwing him the ball or Aaron Rodgers. It's EJ Manuel, who's also pretty young. So I think they'll have some growing pains there. Mike Williams is a guy I'd kind of keep an eye on, especially in training camp. I still probably am not looking to go out and draft him and I'm not real excited about him. I know Slim in other years he's known Mike a lot better, studied him well, and he's kind of snuck him in late in an auction and stuff, and been probably pretty happy with the results. But I'm a wait and see type of approach with him right now. Bryce Brown, I think, is an interesting pick. Now, if any of you guys are still listening from the ECL, this is where you push the mute button and you don't listen here for a bit. Obviously, CJ Spiller and Fred Jackson in the last year of a contract, and CJ was a huge disappointment last year. Take it from an owner of him. I know he did not do anything. There was a quote, and some of these things they always stick with you. We're going to give him the ball till he pukes. Well, it was me puking after about 6 weeks of watching him do nothing. So, he's in the last year of a contract. Fred Jackson is 90 years old. So, I can't see them renewing his contract. So, Bryce Brown's only 23 years old. Now, he had a bit of fumbling problems in Philly, but to be honest with you, he's in a much better spot there being in Buffalo. The Philadelphia backfield got pretty crowded in a hurry, and he's in a spot where, if Fred Jackson was solid last year, and he could still probably be solid this year, no reason to think he couldn't. I know he is getting older there, but if CJ struggles, there's a good chance Bryce Brown's going to get on the field this year, and as long as he can hold on to the ball, I think he could be very effective in Buffalo. So he's definitely a guy to target, and probably in your auction you're going to pick him up for depending on when you draft and how things shake out in training camps. Right now you could get Bryce Brown for $1 or $2 probably. If your draft is in August, you're probably going to end up paying a lot more money for him if things shake out the way I think they will. Or vice versa, if you're in just a snake or something, you probably can pick him up and late in the draft, 15th, 16th, 17th round or something like that. So that's my take on those guys. All right,
Slim, let's move to Miami Dolphins. Pick up Noshawn Moreno, which I guess is the big free agent pickup there. What do you think about Noshawn in South Florida?
Well, I think his fantasy value obviously plummets now that he's going to the Dolphins and leaving his, the prolific passing offense that was the Denver Broncos. But I think there's some positives here still. One, he's versatile, so he could be on the field in lots of different situations. Another thing is he showed his pass protection ability in Denver, and I think that Miami has to like that, considering they've had a pretty porous offensive line last year, and they're probably looking for as much protection for Tannehill as possible. So for that standpoint, I think it's a smart move for them. Now it remains to be seen how many snaps he'll actually get. Is he just going to be kind of more a third down back? Have the Dolphins really decided to pack it in and kind of give up on Lamar Miller and Daniel Thomas? If that's the case, then I think Moreno's a RB2. But right now, until I've seen exactly how they're used, maybe in training camp and maybe a couple preseason games under their belt, I'm thinking of Moreno more as a flex option right now, with hopefully some upside, and maybe you can get him for a steal. I have a feeling he's going to be overvalued, I think, a little bit on draft day, at least initially, just because of what he did in Denver last year. It's fresh in everybody's minds, and they might not be thinking about exactly how big of a hit his fantasy value will actually take going to a place like Miami. So it's a guy you might want to have on your radar if you can get him as a value, but it might be tough to get that value initially.
All right. Good. I mean, it is. I don't know. It's interesting when you get the. I don't know. He wasn't much of a name preseason last year. We were kind of humming and hawing, and that Ball would take over for him and all types of things. And
all Hillman and Ball, right?
Yeah, yeah. So he gets good numbers and then moves to a not very good situation, and so I don't know. How much are you thinking about how good he was prior to last season, and now how good he is, and what would his value be inflated at, or underflated? Underflated? Anyways, it's I don't know. I think it's an interesting, deflated, inflated.
There you go.
Fullated. Sorry, there's my phallic joke for the night. You can't see below the camera.
I thought that meant you were.
No. All right. Sorry. Anyways, Buster, let's move to your New England Patriots. Someone we've been discussing off the air as far as just where is he going to fall as far as drafts goes. Looking at Brandon LaFell, what do you think of him at New England?
Well, I kind of like him right now.
Sounded like Elmer Fudd there for a second. Sorry, I kind of like. Sure.
I'm not sure what to say. I don't want too many people to start stealing. They were reading our minds when we weren't talking about them, and now if we start talking about them, we don't have a lot of picks coming up in this draft we're in. So, not. Anyways, no, I don't mind. 27 years old, Brandon LaFell. He's coming out of an offense that many people are going to forget because he's never put up great numbers, right? The most receptions he got 1 year is 49. The most yards, 677. And the most TDs he had were 5. And those weren't all in the same year. But he's only 27 years old. He's 6'2". I kind of like that. I like the fact that he could be potentially a nice big target in the red zone. I mean, there's bigger guys out there for sure, but you got to think of Amendola, who's tiny, and Edelman, who's not very big, and some of these guys. Now, last year, New England drafted Dobson and Tompkins. Well, Tompkins was undrafted. And they had their growing pains, and we had a lot of talk on air about why wouldn't they get a quality guy? They lost Welker. Why wouldn't they bring in a quality guy? Now, I still don't think LaFell is that quality, but I think Edelman's still going to see the most targets from Brady. As long as he can stay healthy, he'll see the most. I can see Amendola, who knows? He could be hurt or cut before the season starts, depending on how these younger guys work out. But I think LaFell is going to be that could work out quite nicely with Brady. I mean, most of these guys have either been there for, like, Edelman's the only guy that's been there for more than a year. And the rest of these guys, including LaFell, haven't, been there too long to work with Brady. I just think that he might be a nice pickup this year. I can see him putting up better numbers than he has. Maybe he'll put up maybe 800 yards and 850, maybe 900 yards, 65 catches perhaps, and maybe get in the end zone 6 to 8 times. So that would be a lot better year than anything he's ever had. What is that worth for your fantasy team? Well, he might be a wide receiver 3. He might be worth $10, $12 in your auction. I don't know.
Right. So are you going to get him for wide receiver 3 numbers, do you think? Like, I don't know, $10 for my wide receiver 3. Unless I'm saving money somewhere else, maybe I'm rotating a few cheap guys off the bench. I don't know.
Yeah.
And can you get him for 10? But I guess it's early yet.
Well, I think you can get, again, he's another one of these guys you could probably get cheaper now than potentially in later August after they played some exhibition games. And if he showed something out there on the field, it's going to cost you a lot more just because it's offense with Brady. Look at Kimbrel Tompkins last year. People were going gaga over him in the preseason, and it cost a lot of money for him down the road eventually, but he really didn't produce anything. So the people that knew him best were accurate in predicting him. So, I think LaFell, he's got more experience. He's got some size, and I think he could potentially produce. Somebody's got to catch some touchdowns for them, and if Gronk is unhealthy, then he might be the next biggest target they have that's capable.
Right. Okay. So, Slim, let's move to you. Just so you guys know, I see I messed up the order, so I've redone it on the script. Just pay attention to that in case unless you want me to go back. I don't care that either. But, anyways, is that okay or no? All right. Sorry, just because I had.
Pants anyway.
Yeah, I know. Because I had Blister just talking about Jacoby Ford, which made no sense because it wasn't a separate bullet. Anyways. Not that there's anything to talk about there. So, Slim, you have a lot to talk about here, maybe or maybe not, as far as the New York Jets go. We've got the Mike Vick pickup, Eric Decker, Chris Johnson. I don't know if you want to mention Daryl Richardson and Blister's Jacoby Ford, which everyone will say will be my Jacoby Ford because I'm pretty sure I picked up at least one Oakland receiver for the last 4 years. Anyways, Slim, anything? Well, obviously, there's some things you want to talk about as far as the Jets go.
Yeah, I mean, Vic's. It sounds like they're gonna give him a chance to compete. They're not making it a secret. I don't think, unless you're very, very desperate, you even want to touch the situation as far as the quarterbacks go. Even if Vic does win a starting job, we know he's one solid hit away from being out for a considerable amount of time, and even if he doesn't get that hit, he could be, ineffective. So I would stay away from that situation. Eric Decker, to me, he's a wide receiver 3 this year. I think he'll be kind of hard pressed to get 1,000 yards even. Just again, a quarterback situation is going to hinder him. He's obviously coming from, one of the best situations you could possibly have in Denver to maybe one of the worst. As far as what the Jets are going to put out there at quarterback. Excuse me. The running back position, this kind of bummed me out, actually, because I liked Chris Ivory going into this year as a kind of a little bit of a sleeper. He didn't produce as much as I thought last year. I was probably higher on him than a lot of other people, but I liked what I saw when he got touches. It was just hard for him to get touches. It seemed like the coaching staff didn't want to trust him for whatever reason. So I thought maybe this year they might get a chance to give him more carries, and then they went and got Chris Johnson, who I think will probably get the most carries of any running back on this roster. I would think he'll probably get somewhere around 200, maybe a little bit over that. Then you look at Ivory, he's probably in line for something maybe like 150-ish. And you're looking at Powell or now Daryl Richardson, who I think will challenge Powell now as the kind of change of pace back. And he might be looking at maybe 100, 125, 150 carries. So now you kind of get this 3-headed monster there. Nobody's really going to dominate at all. I think Chris Johnson can be maybe a low-end RB2 right now. I think Ivory has some value because I think he can be a goal line back. And I think you're going to have to wait and see about Richardson or Powell. Then you probably don't want to touch either of them or take them very, very late in the draft. Maybe if you got Chris Johnson or Ivory on your roster, even as a handcuff. But and then Jacoby Ford, I mean, to me, he's just there for some special teams work and a kick returner. So he's pretty much fantasy irrelevant.
Right. Okay. Unless you're in a league we were in a few years ago, all of a sudden he's a rock star.
He's the best wide receiver maybe to
own. We just always go back to it. Anyways, Blister, let's move on to the Baltimore Ravens. Justin Forsett, Steve Smith, Owen Daniels. Anything as far as Ravens football?
Well, I'm not too excited about these guys really overall. Forsett, I guess we have to wait and see what happens with Ray Rice if he's going to spend any time. Get suspended, do any jail time. I don't know what's happening.
The post on the ECL was that he's playing in the Southern California Penal League. So,
well, that would be great because we own Bernard Pierce. So
yes, exactly. Anyways, continue. Sorry.
But Steve Smith, I mean, again, he was in Carolina. I just got done saying LaFell. It wasn't a real pass-heavy offense, but last year he was their leading receiver with 745 yards and 4 TDs. Now, we know Flacco can sling it and will, but I think that he's not going to put up even those numbers still yet in Baltimore. I think he's on the decline of his career. Torrey Smith is going to see the most targets. Marlon Brown actually had a decent year. He only finished 5 spots behind Stevie Smith last year as far as the fantasy ranks go. He had 524 yards and 7 TDs, so I think he's already established that chemistry with Flacco. So, again, he's a guy that I'd rather let somebody else draft as well, and I'll say the same about Owen Daniels. I mean, Owen Daniels he can never stay healthy, and I think for a while they might be able to run a couple, 2 tight end sets with him and Pitta, which could be helpful. But as far as fantasy goes, again, I would rather let somebody else draft all 3 of those guys. I can't see Forsett being drafted at all. Owen Daniels may, and Steve Smith probably will be, but I just don't want them on my team. I don't think they're going to be that valuable.
Okay, good stuff. Slim, we've already touched on the Cleveland Browns a little bit, but let's take a look. Ben Tate, Andrew Hawkins from the CFL. Nate Burleson, we just recently mentioned the Miles Austin and Earl Bennett pickups. Slim, anything stand out as far as Cleveland Browns go?
Well, like you said, we touched on it quite a bit. I mean, we've gone into how kind of a mess their wide receivers are. I don't really think, other than if you want to take a really, really, really late flyer on Josh Gordon, or maybe you get some good news before your draft and you find out he's only missing half the year, you take him earlier than that. But with the rest of these receivers, I mean, it's kind of flip a coin as to who's going to do what game in, game out. So I'm going to avoid that whole mess. Ben Tate, I think he could be an RB2. But now after the draft, his value, I think it takes a hit. And Terrence West can be productive, and Isaiah Crowell, I think, I wouldn't be shocked if by the end of the year he's getting the most touches every game. So, Blister talked about Tate's injury history, so he could be a guy that's overvalued, and you might just want to stay away from on drafts as well too. So, yeah, to me, they're just disappointing as a whole. They went from a team that I think all of us were kind of excited about before the draft until about, in a matter of a few days, it just kind of turned into a real just shit show. So, yeah, okay. We can go on to the next team.
All right, let's do it. The Pittsburgh Steelers, Blister, LeGarrette Blount, Lance Moore, DHB, Darius Hayward-Bay, all free agent pickups from the Steelers. Yes, I know, DHB. Anyways, continue, Blister. What do you think about Steelers and their free agents?
Well, LeGarrette Blount's probably the only interesting one they grabbed, and he could be potentially useful. Obviously, you never know how they're going to use him exactly, but he'll be able to spell off Le'Veon Bell and give him a break once in a while and be a quality backup. He could potentially be a vulture for some touchdowns here and there, so that's something to keep an eye on as training camps progress and they get into some preseason games. So you might, if you're a Bell owner, you might want to handcuff him with Blount. I don't know if he'll get much competition from the rookie this year, that Dry Archer or whatever it is, Dre Archer, Dry, Dre, Dro, Dre, Dr. Dre, whatever.
Dr. Dre, nice.
I don't know. I haven't read a lot great about him, and I don't have a feeling he will, but you never know. Anyway, so Blount, yeah, he's interesting. Now the other two, they're just plain losers, if you ask me. Lance Moore, he can't play outside of a dome, and even then, when he was in the dome, he was kind of shaky at best, let's say. And so now he's going to be playing outside all year long. I really think that he's going to curl up into a little ball on the sideline by a heater and with a blankie, and he's going to be useless to you. I'm confident in that. That's why I think Antonio Brown, Wheaton, and Martavis Bryant much more valuable than Lance Moore. I wouldn't waste any money or any draft picks on him. And DHB, why do they keep the guy around? I mean, where has he went? What if they show him in the NFL?
Because it's cool to say DHB.
I think it must be the only reason DHB, it sounds like a drug or something, and so they want to talk about it maybe. But he's been around the NFL. I don't ever remember saying, damn, I wish I would have drafted that guy. I keep thinking, damn, why is he even in the league? Like, that's a waste of space. So who knows if he'll even be there come. If they listen to this podcast, they'll cut his ass.
And they do. Mike Tomlin. Did you hear
Put
that?
on the board.
No, easy. That's the other podcast. All right.
I know. They're not bad.
All right. So moving on to you, the Houston Texans, Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback, Andre Brown, the running back, and Mike Thomas, a wide receiver. Free agent implications here?
Sorry.
No?
Well, yeah, there's not much. Fitzpatrick, I think. Some people were shocked that the Texans didn't spend a higher pick to get a quarterback that they, could play maybe with some more confidence. But so I mean, maybe you take a late round flyer on him as a streamer just because he has Andre Johnson, and hopefully Hopkins improves a little bit. But as far as Andre Brown, I'm not sold on him. He's going to go for way more money, I think, than he's going to be worth in the long run. He's injury prone. He's older than Ben Tate was, and I don't think he's that much further ahead than the other running backs on the roster. And then I think Mike Thomas, he wasn't even in the league last year. From what I've been reading, the Texans look like they're going to run a lot of two tight end formations, so they're probably not going to have three wide receivers on the field that often. So to me, combine that with the potential for bad quarterback play, and he's someone you just want to avoid altogether.
Okay, good. Did you hear that about Andre Brown, Blister? Moving on.
No.
Okay, good.
Blister,
you're talking. No, I don't know. He thinks he's going to be overvalued. Quit reading the funny posts on the chat room there. Blister, you're talking about the Indianapolis Colts. Andrew Luck has Hakeem Nicks to throw to now. What do you think of his fantasy implications?
Well, I kind of like it. I mean, Hakeem Nicks was pretty much garbage last year, but he had, what did he have, almost 900 yards maybe? He just never found the end zone. And, I mean, the whole Giants offense was pretty kind of yuck, and Reggie Wayne is aging, and he's coming off an injury, so we'll see how he does. T.Y. Hilton obviously is the first guy you'd want there, but I think he's worth a flyer, Hakeem Nicks, this year. I mean, he's going to a whole different team, whole different offense. Andrew Luck is obviously can move the chains and he can get the ball to his receivers. I just think that he's a potential a guy I see as potentially having a rebound year. Now, a rebound year, I mean, how big is that going to be? I don't expect 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns or anything like that because there's a number of guys around him. But you got to look at the backfield as well in Indy, and it's got a lot of question marks. With Trent Richardson and Bradshaw and Ballard. I mean, as the health of those guys, are they gonna regroup? Because if they don't have a run game, obviously it's going to hurt everything because people can try to shut down their receivers, but at the same point, they're going to have to throw the ball a lot potentially. So he's going to get some looks, and I just think that this is basically his last chance. He's going to have to do something here, or he might find himself out of football soon. So I have a feeling it might be a pleasant surprise, and I know others are thinking along that line. I mean, I see him going in drafts that I'm in, in the top, I don't know, I guess it must be in the top 10 at least, top 10 rounds, that is, top 8. Which seems kind of high, but he's definitely, people seem to be thinking along the same line that he's going to have a little bit of a rebound this year.
Well, that was going to be my next question, Blister. Do you think he's going to be overvalued, undervalued, or where do you think he's going to slot as far as the option?
He could potentially be a little overvalued. I mean, I think you got to look at, he could be a number 3 receiver there, which to me is, if he's going before around 14 might be kind of early. I don't know. He could be a little bit overvalued. Maybe not. Maybe that's too late. But probably, I don't know. From what I am seeing, yeah, he's going to get snatched out of there a little bit earlier than what I expected.
Hey, I know you're in a lot of snake drafts right now, Blister, but let's quit the round talk. It's a faux pas on the auctioneer. Anyways.
Well, yeah, I know that's what's kind of clouding my judgment.
It's
for
what's
dollar
in your head
value.
right now.
I think we should throw him out early in our auction right now. I think he'd probably cost people more dollars than he's worth.
Especially if you have some bandwagon Colts fans.
Sure.
I can just picture someone wearing the hat in there. They'd be like, yeah, he's going to be.
And it's also to kind of the not to be rude, but maybe more of an uneducated person. Like they recognize that name, Hakeem Nicks, right? He's with the Colts and Andrew Luck. So it's hype, and there's probably more hype there and just because they know that name, they're going to potentially throw some more money at it.
Well, and that's where it's maybe the good idea to throw him out a little bit early. It'll help set the bar for wide receivers, and maybe someone will spend a little more on him because of that value, and they have money kicking around too, right?
For sure.
Oh, that name value, sorry. Okay, Slim, let's move to you. Speaking of name values, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Toby Gerhart, probably the only thing to sort of mention here.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't crazy about this signing when it first happened, but reading a little bit more about it, it sounds like Jacksonville, they're looking at maybe getting him. I saw one thing, 15 to 20 touches a game, which that's a lot of touches. I mean, even if he gets 15 and plays, say, in 15 games, that's what, 300 touches or something like that. I don't even know.
I don't know. Phys ed teacher.
Yeah, well, whatever. It's a lot of touches. That's a ton of touches, right? But yeah, I mean, just if he gets those opportunities, I mean, what I'm curious about is if teams start stacking the box against them, then how many yards is he capable of picking up? I don't think he's very elusive. The one thing I did like about it, I was kind of reading some old scouting reports of when he came out of college just to try and get a vibe of maybe how the Jaguars might use him. He actually had decent hands coming out of Stanford, so it sounds like he could be on the field for all 3 downs, which is something you like in your fantasy running backs. So right now I think he's RB2, and maybe more of the middle tier or lower RB2, but I think he's got definite goal line potential, and with with this many touches, you could start racking up maybe some considerable but yet unflashy fantasy points. So yeah, he's somebody I think you might want to target on draft day.
Okay. I like the searching back into the college days to research that. Nice. I like it. Blister, another bunch of big names here for you. The Tennessee Titans, Dexter McCluster, the hybrid player. I don't know if we want to get into Rubisky, Whitehurst. I don't think. I mean, Charlie Whitehurst is probably on your fantasy radar, right, Blister?
None of these guys are. Move on.
Moving on. Okay.
I can't remember if it was this draft or that other one I was in, and people were very sad that the Titans really didn't seem to be doing a whole lot. Bishop Sankey, obviously the rookie that they grabbed, is highly sought after right now, but after that, the list is pretty short. So I can't see any of these guys having a fantasy impact. I hope people draft them. Like, I think everybody in the ECL should get a piece of the Titans this year because that will really help us.
Brian Rubisky, though, isn't he just a great route runner? I don't know. Isn't that something that they could? Wasn't that touted coming out of college, Slim? You must
sorry?
Votes for that. Rubisky, wasn't he a great route runner coming out of college?
Well, I think it was his old man who was a wide receiver coach in the NFL. So yeah, he was supposed to be a pretty solid wide receiver from what I remember. I believe it was Ohio State. I try to block those out as Michigan fans. So
it's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
It'll be all right. Okay, so anyways, I just thought it was a good line. I like the good route runner. They tend to pan out. So Slim, going to you, Denver Broncos route runners, Emmanuel Sanders. With the Broncos, thoughts about Emmanuel in Big D, not Big D. Oh, sorry, back that up in Denver. Sorry.
Could be a Big D depending on where you're from.
No. Big D.
There's only one.
Yes.
Anyway, I don't know. It's hard not to like Sanders. Obviously, he's got into a good situation, into what could be another year of prolific passing up in Denver. He should see a lot of single coverage as long as Welker stays healthy, and Julius Thomas and Demarius will take some focus. So I think he could definitely push as a wide receiver too this year, and I know last year I took him as somebody who I thought could be a solid wide receiver 3. Didn't necessarily pan out quite the way I envisioned. He had flashes, but I think obviously this year he's in a little bit better situation than he was last year in Pittsburgh. So I think for sure he's wide receiver 3 and could maybe potentially be wide receiver 2. Now the question is just value, what you're going to get with him. Again, he's one of these guys. He's not necessarily big name, but just the situation he's going into, I think, is going to drive his price up, and it's going to be hard to probably get him for a value. You're probably getting him price-wise at his ceiling, which you typically don't necessarily want to do, especially when you're not talking about number one wide receivers. So excuse me, it might be tough to get him for value on draft day. It might be someone you might end up having to avoid.
So maybe another early nomination type of a guy.
Well, it depends how high you're on him. If you really think you can snatch him later in the draft, then I don't think that's somebody you want. Well, you should say, who knows? Yeah, maybe early you could get him still for a good price. It depends. That's knowing your draft right there, or seeing some trends. Maybe a couple other people try to sneak somebody in like that, and it hasn't gone very well. So you think, okay, if I want him, I'm going to have to wait and try and budget some couple extra bucks in case there's a little bit of a bidding war. But who knows? Sometimes nominating early, people are sitting on their money waiting for certain big name players, and they don't want to spend extra dollars on these middle tier guys quite yet. So yeah.
Well, I was thinking too, maybe you could get someone to drop a few extra bucks on them because they have a fat wallet at the beginning, and there's the hype and Peyton Manning and
yeah. Oh,
as my mom would say.
And that could definitely happen too. It's just be prepared that maybe you have to be one of the people bidding just in case it starts off a little bit slow.
Right. Okay. All right. Blister, moving on to the Kansas City Chiefs. Joe McKnight? No. Am I just continuing on?
Yeah, I don't see any reason to think about Joe McKnight. So next.
Beauty. Slim going on to the Oakland Raiders. Moving on. Just kidding. Matt Schaub, Trent Edwards.
You can't believe he's still in the league. Wasn't that the first auction?
I actually had to laugh the first time I saw that.
So I had to double take it.
I can't believe you got out of them.
Unbelievable.
Can't believe I just mentioned them on a podcast in fantasy football. Anyways, Maurice Jones-Drew and James Jones, of course, all to the Raiders. Slim, anything here fantasy-wise?
Well, I think MJD can definitely have some fantasy implications. The quarterback situation, I mean, it's kind of ugly there, but yeah, it's going to be tough. I just think the offense as a whole is going to be not very prolific, to say the least. So somebody like MJD, he's not going to get tons and tons of opportunity, perhaps, and he's still going to be there competing with McFadden. The receivers in Oakland, you got James Jones, and then there's Denarius Moore still, and those guys. They're just kind of, to me, all a bunch of kind of meddling wide receiver 3 candidates. Oh. Yeah, so I typically try and stay away from there. I know maybe other podcasters like to try and get at least one of those Oakland wide receivers every year because I'm not sure why, but maybe he could even be on this podcast right now. I'm not sure. But,
maybe, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, to me,
late round flyer guy I'm not married to that I'll dump for $1. That's, you know what I mean? And all you need is one guy. Who knows? Anyways, that's why.
Okay. Well, an MJD, I would be tempted to take a flyer on him as a flex running back. Especially if I could pair him up with a couple other decent options. Just because I think there'll be he's going to have a few big games. It's just I don't think it's going to be very consistent though.
Well, I was going to go back and just mention there was a Scooby-Doo joke when you had meddling, but it was meddling kids.
Meddling kids.
Take his mask off. I would have been able to do it if it was. Speaking of old guy shaking his fist, Blister, let's wrap this up. Leave you with your just happened this way too. Again, I didn't mean for you to talk about the Patriots, and I definitely didn't mean for you to talk about the Chargers. But even with Norv gone, you haven't even brought him up this podcast, so I thought I should. Really, that's the only thing. Donald Brown moving over there. I don't know what that does for that cloudy backfield as it is, but talk to Don Hufnagel, the San Diego Chargers.
Yeah, Don just took one of our picks.
Yeah, I know we did. That's I know.
God damn.
I saw that. That's why I shook my head a little earlier.
We will have to trade out of this round because there's nothing left that we want. Who am I talking about? San Diego?
Yeah.
Oh, you got to draft Kellen Clemens. Oh, yeah. No. Donald Brown's an interesting one. Not really, but Ryan Matthews does have his injury history. Danny Woodhead's there, so now Donald Brown. You figure he's going to see some action of some sort, but in all reality, I don't know how you can really draft the Brisbane anybody. Excuse me, sorry about that yawn, but way past my bedtime. I don't know. Again, there's another guy that I probably wouldn't be too excited about picking up or paying any money for. So maybe by the time August rolls around, he might be worth $2-3 in your auction, but I can't see ever having to spend more than that on him.
All right. Well, guys, that was the AFC free agency list. Pretty quick, actually. I'm pleasantly surprised. Next week, Slim will have all of his NFC stuff done, so we can run our way through that as we start moving into the summertime. It felt like it almost today with the weather out there, so it gets to be exciting as we start to gear this thing up. So that was the AFC free agents. Make sure you head on over to our website. We've got values are being updated all the time. Check out the draft kit page. Get your early bird special multimedia updated all summer long kit. Right now it's on for just under a $5 smash. So that's dirt cheap. Go buy yourself a grande or coffee at a certain establishment that doesn't sponsor us, and or get our draft kit, one or the other. That's kind of how it works. So thefantasyfootballauction.com/draft kit, and shout out to those of you who are right now partaking in some daily baseball blister over at fantasysports4u.com. Again, head on over to our website, click the banner, use the promo code auction, double up your first match, just like B. Sorrell did. As we mentioned last week, he dropped 50, got another 50. He's playing on house money blister.
He might have beat me on a game this week. Maybe yesterday he might have beat me. Yeah, well, I didn't realize that was who it was. Well, I'm glad I let him win now.
Good. Well played. Yeah. Anyways, guys, you get writing on that draft kit. I won't see you tomorrow because I'm up to DHS for a little high school soccer action. And for the rest of you, I'll see you when it's springtime in the Rockies.